The vault is not a collection of folklore or campfire tales. It holds the things that defy classification, reports filed under duress, confessions made in panic, and a sworn statement that authorities deemed too corrosive to process. In these short files, we examine the chilling patterns that emerge when reality becomes procedural, when the uncanny adheres to a rigid, clockwork schedule. This is Tales from the Vault, Episode 1. Our first case is filed under VNR-191. It is the sworn deposition of former California Highway Patrol Trooper Marcus Lee, whose 9-year career was ended by a pattern he couldn't stop and a speed he could not match. I'm Trooper Marcus Lee, 9 years with the CHP. My sector is the 101 corridor in the Central Valley. Flatland, citrus groves, and a whole lot of silence. My life runs on the graveyard shift, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., mostly routine, until the first Tuesday in October. That's when I saw the runner. I was past the Oxnard exit, running radar at 65 miles per hour, when my peripheral vision caught something in the emergency lane. A figure. I thought it was a drunk, or maybe a jogger in deep denial about the time. I flicked on my spotlight. That's when the strangeness hit me. The figure wasn't just jogging, he was moving with this metronomic, effortless stride that was perfectly parallel to the white line. He was dressed entirely in dark gray, with no reflectors. He looked less like a person running and more like a gear in a machine. I checked my speed, 65 miles per hour. I glanced at him. He held pace. I kept the spotlight on him and pressed the pedal down instinctively, 70 miles per hour. He didn't break stride. His arms pumped stiffly, his head locked forward. I pushed the cruiser, 80 miles per hour. The engine was protesting and the wind noise was loud, but I was focused on him. He was glued to my driver's side, locked in that moving column of light. I couldn't hear feet hitting the asphalt over my engine, but I knew he was making no sound. And he was not breathing heavy. There was no strain, no visible exertion, just the rhythm. At 80 miles per hour, two things hit me with the force of a heart attack. One, he had been keeping this speed for over 2 minutes. Two, I slammed the brakes, slowing to 45 miles per hour. He didn't slow down. He simply continued his 80 mile per hour pace, passing my cruiser like I was standing still, and he vanished into the darkness ahead. My report was dismissed. Fatigue, optical illusion. But I knew what I saw, and I started tracking the pattern. The runner returned, always on a Tuesday night, always between 1:15 a.m. and 1:30 a.m., always in the same 5-mile stretch. I tried keeping it to myself, but other guys started seeing him. Jensen, Martinez, same description, tall, dark, perfectly rhythmic, and the speed. No one could outrun him, but you couldn't approach him either. It was like he was waiting for the chase. The pattern evolved. He would appear only once the patrol car reached 55 miles an hour. Then he'd match velocity. Jensen told me he floored it one night, pushing his cruiser to 110 miles an hour. The runner matched him. He said for 30 terrifying seconds, he was trying to chase a man on foot. Jensen broke first. He swerved into the middle lane, taking his foot off the gas. The runner, unbound, kept his 110 mile an hour pace, sprinting straight into a patch of absolute black road and disappearing entirely mid-stride. My final sighting was 2 months ago. Again, 1:20 a.m. I saw him. But this time, he was already running in the center lane against traffic at 90 miles per hour. I slowed to a stop on the shoulder and watched him run straight into the bright high beam headlights of an oncoming 18-wheeler. There was no collision, no sound. The figure simply became obscured by the truck's grille, and when the truck passed, the center lane was empty. The trucker hadn't seen a thing. The reports have stopped now. They classify it as mass hallucination. I still drive that stretch of the 101 every Tuesday night, and I keep my speed under 55 miles per hour. Because I don't fear that the runner will be waiting in the dark. I fear that he's waiting for me to finally try and match his speed again. The strange occurrences in the vault are rarely dramatic. Most are tedious. They adhere to routine. They are simply things that are wrong on a schedule. Case MOL-324 comes from David Gentry, a sanitation worker who learned that patience is not a virtue when the object of your observation is observing you back. My name is David Gentry. I work sanitation in a packing house just outside of Bakersfield. It's hard, honest work. The graveyard shift starts at 10 p.m. By 5 a.m., when the first morning chill hits, I'm ready for my cigarette break. I take it outside behind the processing facility, right where the cracked asphalt meets the old irrigation ditch. Beyond the ditch is the orchard line, miles of empty citrus groves. I started noticing the time, 5:12 a.m., not 5:10, not 5:15, always 5:12. That's when I'd see him, the man at the orchard line. He was standing right where the rows of trees began, too far away to make out features, but clearly a man. He wore a dark coat that looked heavy, even in the cool desert morning. I figured he was a homeless guy, or maybe a migrant worker starting early. I'd finish my cigarette, go back inside, and he'd be gone by the time my shift ended. That first week, he was maybe 200 yards out, just a silhouette. I marked his location mentally, right next to that crooked cedar tree that got hit by lightning. I didn't think much of it until the following Monday. I was out at 5:12 a.m. He was there. But he wasn't by the cedar tree. He was closer. He had moved across the irrigation ditch and was standing at the edge of the asphalt. I'd guess 100 yards? Still too far for features, but the sheer speed of the change bothered me. He hadn't been this close yesterday. Was he watching me? I kept this routine for the rest of October. Every day, 5:12 a.m. I'd go out, light up, and look toward the orchards. And every day he was closer. Not by much, maybe 5 feet closer each morning. It was so slow, so deliberate, that if you didn't mark the exact location, you'd miss it. By the first week of November, he was 50 yards away. Close enough that I could see the cut and shape of the dark coat. It was one of those old, bulky wool greatcoats. The kind you see in black and white pictures. He still wasn't moving. He was just there, waiting for 5:12 a.m. This is where it gets hard to explain. For the next 3 weeks, he stopped moving forward, but I could start seeing him up close. No facial details because he was always facing away from the facility, staring straight into the orchard line. But I saw his hands. They were clasped behind his back, motionless. And I saw his hair, long, black, and slicked back, catching the faint glow of the warehouse lights. I started taking my break indoors. The air was warmer, the coffee was better. I avoided that spot. On the morning of December 3rd, I decided to face it. I went out at 5:12 a.m. He was no longer 50 yards away. He was right there, 10 feet away. He was standing on the asphalt, right on the edge of my shadow. I felt the cold radiating off the back of his coat. He was enormous, and he was still facing away from me toward the trees. I could hear the faint, dry sound of his breathing, like old paper rubbing together. I backed up slowly, heart hammering in my ears. I stumbled back into the warehouse. I didn't clock out that day. I ran. That was the end of that job. I quit. Found work 20 miles away, closer to town. I swore I'd never take another 5 a.m. break outside again. I filed this report thinking it was over, but 2 weeks ago, I started my new shift. Same graveyard hours, same 5:12 a.m. break time. Last Tuesday, I went out for a smoke, just muscle memory. It was raining. I looked out past the small loading dock at the fence line, and I saw him. He was standing maybe 300 yards away, perfectly still, facing the empty street. He hadn't stopped. He just reset the distance. And he was already closer than he was that first day. Sometimes a pattern doesn't need to be physical. Sometimes the anomaly is merely a signal, a frequency. And when that signal is decades old and it knows your name, it ceases to be a ghost story and becomes an indictment. Our final report, CCS-701, documents Eleanor's attempt to escape a broadcast that was trying to reach her from the past. My name is Eleanor. I inherited my grandmother's house 3 years ago. It's a good house, solid, but her old TV is still in the corner of the den. It's one of those giant wood grain units with a fuzzy screen and a satisfying loud thunk when you turn the channel knob. She bought it in 1982. It is a dinosaur. I don't use it, but I leave it plugged in, mostly because I'm too lazy to haul it out. I work late nights. My routine is to crash on the sofa around 2 a.m. That's when it started. I'd be half asleep when I'd hear the sound. A low, ragged buzz, immediately followed by a burst of loud static. The TV was turning itself on. I'd get up irritated and see the screen. Not a blue screen, but pure chaotic white noise. Snow. And a sound like frying bacon. I'd smack the side of the unit and the power would shut off. This happened every night for a week. Then, on the 8th night, I didn't get up immediately. I just lay there listening to the hiss of the snow. Suddenly, the static subsided. The screen didn't go black. It focused. The image was pale, flickering, and stretched. It looked like a very old, cheap video recording. There was a low-quality graphic at the bottom of the screen. Missing persons bulletin. The only color was a faint, sickly green hue over everything. A woman was talking, a news anchor. Her hair was enormous, her blouse ruffled. Her voice was muffled, like she was speaking from inside a glass jar. I sat up. I realized the channel knob was pointed directly to channel 7. The anchor was reading the name and date of the missing person. A child who disappeared from a park in 1984. She held up a grainy black and white photo. I knew that child. That case was solved years ago. The body was found. This wasn't a rerun. This was a broadcast from the past. I grabbed my phone to film it, but the moment I moved, the screen dissolved back into the loud, buzzing snow. I couldn't explain it. I checked the TV connections, the antenna. Everything was fine. I started staying awake for it. I was terrified, but obsessed. Every night, exactly at 2:17 a.m., the TV would turn on, and for 30 seconds, the static would clear, and I would be watching a different missing persons bulletin from the 80s or the 90s, always on Channel 7. I saw cases I recognized, and cases I didn't. Each bulletin was a fleeting, ghostly window into an unsolved trauma. The last broadcast I saw was the hardest to watch. It was 2 weeks ago. The screen was clearer than usual. The anchor looked distraught. She was reporting on a missing elderly woman from my neighborhood who had vanished in 1991. The anchor was choked up, talking about the despair of the search team. Then the image wobbled. The woman on the screen paused, looked directly into the camera, and tilted her head. She wasn't looking at the camera of the original 1991 broadcast. She was looking straight at me. The anchor's voice cracked one last time, cutting through the ringing in my ears. And I didn't hear a name from 1991. She said my name, Eleanor. I jumped out of the sofa. The screen had already reverted to snow, but the whisper was real. It came from the speaker cabinet of the old TV. I ripped the plug from the wall. The CRT whine died, leaving dead silence. I don't know what cold channel I found. A broadcast that shouldn't exist. A loop of the vanished. But I know this. The time between the TV turning on and the screen clearing is getting shorter. And the people on the screen are looking more and more toward the present. I'm packing a box right now to take the TV to the dump. But every time I touch the wood grain, I feel a sudden, intense chill. And I swear I can hear the faintest, low-level buzz coming from inside the unplugged unit. Routine is the comfort that keeps us grounded. We trust the clock, the shift schedule, the rhythm of the road. But in these files, in these tales from the vault, we see that the true terror is when something unnatural uses that routine against us, when the monster adheres to the schedule better than we do. For those who submitted these reports, the pattern stops only when they run, and even then, they can never be certain they haven't simply given the pattern a new destination. This file is now closed.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear.